Hey everyone, welcome back to the last part of this series covering the creation and use of multiple VMs for MT4 backtesting. This is going to be really tech heavy and is going to focus on the needed computer specs as well as the proper implementation and install for you guys to be up and running. For the computer specs, here are the minimum specs that I would suggest. Special thanks to Fidelis in the Discord server who sent me what he uses to run his VMs. He can run 3 VMs comfortably, but he can go up to 5 if he really wants to. And he uses the following specs. CPU, 4 core, 4 thread. He's using an i3-8100. 16 gigabytes of RAM. If you only have 8 gigabytes, you could probably get away with 1 or 2 machines running at 2 gigabytes each machine, but it's far from ideal. If you have the ability to upgrade to 16, do it. It's pretty easy to do. You can find YouTube tutorials on how to do it. Just make sure you get the right type of RAM that's going to fit and go well with what you already have. He sets the CPU to 2 cores, and that pretty much covers everything that he needs. Every once in a while, it'll ramp up to 100%, but if your computer's running at 100% across all cores, it's not going to break anything. It's not going to give you bad results. It's just going to take a little bit longer for all the processes to finish. I should note that if you are using only 2 gigabytes of RAM per machine, I would suggest using Excel instead of Google Sheets. Google Sheets uses a lot of resources and just eats RAM. I'll show you in the C1, C2 video exactly how much that is. It's a lot. Now, as for the hard drive, you can use the standard hard drive that's in the majority of everyone's computers. If you're out of space, I would suggest a USB 3.0 external drive. It's still not going to run super quick or snappy, but it's better than nothing. Your load times are going to be fairly slow for the initial startup of the machine, and the system just doesn't feel as snappy and responsive. It still works fine, it's just not quick and clean. If you have the ability to get an SSD drive, or if you have one, you are 100% in the clear. When I was running off of a USB drive, it would take opening 5 VMs about 3 to 5-ish minutes. With my SSD drive, I can open all 5 within 30 seconds. The OS is snappier, more responsive, and it's just quicker in general. And to this day, I still feel that the single greatest upgrade anyone can give their PC is to get it a solid-state drive. They're fairly cheap nowadays too, and you really don't need a huge one in order to do what we're doing. 500 gigs would be just fine. So here are the computer specs that I would recommend if you have the ability. 4 core, 8 thread with 32 gigabytes of RAM if you can squeeze it. If you are looking to get a new computer or you want to build one, I would say go AMD Ryzen processor all the way. I got my 2700, which is the last gen model. It's got 8 cores, 16 threads, on sale for $150. Great deal. However, at the time of this writing, building a PC is damn near impossible due to production being halted and the lack of inventory because of COVID-19. Prices have just absolutely skyrocketed if you're trying to build a new PC. AMD beats Intel hard right now when it comes to workstation power and has a much better price performance ratio. If you have the ability, go Ryzen. So now it's time to talk about Windows 10 licensing. You do not have to actually activate Windows or buy a copy of it. By not activating Windows, you will get a watermark on your screen, and you will lose the ability to change some of the cosmetic settings like the background, the placement of the taskbar, a couple of other small things. Licenses, if you want to buy them, can be purchased fairly cheap on eBay and other online retailers. There's no reason that you really need to go to Microsoft and pay full price for one. While going through the setup of Windows, you can disconnect your computer from the internet when you are building your first machine. This will allow you to boot up and make any changes to the system before the watermark and activate Windows comes up. Once you make all your changes, the operating system looks the way you want, you are good with your background, you connect the VM to the internet, and then your changes are basically stuck. The good thing is that all the software that you need in order to get VMs up and running is 100% free. Oracle VirtualBox, free software, allows you to make and manage multiple VMs on your computer. The link for that is going to be in the description below. Then you're going to need the Windows Media Creation tool, which is free from Microsoft, which basically allows you to download the operating system, make a bootable ISO file, and install Windows. So when you're ready to install your first VM, I'm going to have you guys actually go to a different video to watch how this guy does it, because he explains it all very well. If you have questions, they're pretty much all answered in the comments section of the video, and it's just a better resource than me just repeating exactly what he says. But before you head over there, I do have a couple of quick suggestions for you guys to look at. So, space for the hard drive. You have two options. You either go fixed sized or dynamic. Fixed size, I would say the minimum is 60 gigabytes. That's typically what Windows recommends. I set mine just to 100. That's just my personal preference, and I haven't hit that limit yet. Dynamic will grow with your needs. So if I was to set dynamic at 100, if I add more files, it'll grow. So if I have a 2 terabyte hard drive, I could grow it to the full size. The problem with dynamic is that if I brought it up to like 1.9 terabytes and I only had 100 gigabytes of free storage left, that's it for that hard drive. I can't say, oh, I'm going to delete a whole bunch of stuff and now I want this hard drive to be 150, 200, 300 gigs anymore. It's stuck at that size. So you can't scale it down, but you can grow it up. If you are using Google Sheets, then I would say that you can run 6 machines comfortably on 32 gigabytes of RAM. So the other thing is only make one VM. Once it is made, install everything that you need. Log into all your accounts, build your macros, and test a full run through of everything to make sure that it works and records everything properly. Once that VM is done and it's 100% working, you can go and make linked clones. I'm going to show you guys how to do that in the video. These take seconds to make. They take up virtually no disk space and can quickly be deleted. I suggest deleting all your linked clones every month or so, running through updates on the original VM machine, and then just recloning everything. The idea is that your main VM stays relatively untouched. You do all your backtesting on your linked clones. If you need to change something, like a macro is off or new software needs to be installed, just go back, delete all the clones, change your base image, and then reclone everything. That way, every time you change something, you don't have to go into 5 separate VMs and change every single one of them. You just do one and then clone it. Alright guys, so I'm remoted into my server that I use for running all the Forex backtesting. I've got a YouTube demo started up here. Let's go ahead and hit the start button. You're going to see that the VM is going to start loading. I've already opened it and ran it a little bit. So here is basically what I do in order to get a brand new machine set up. First thing you'll probably notice is that I do not have the watermark over here for you need to activate Windows. Basically, when you install the operating system, right when you get to that point to where it's like asking you login stuff, things like that, you can turn off the networking either just from your computer or from here. This little thing that says adapter 1, you can turn it off. What this allows you to do is finish installing without linking it to a Microsoft account, as well as give you free range to edit. So by doing that, it basically allows you to go in and personalize the computer to whatever you want. You can change the background, you can change the colors, the themes. One of the first things I pretty much always do is turn on dark mode, and I'm not exactly sure. Oh, there it is. Choose your color, dark. So this is pretty much the first thing I always do. Background, you can change it to whatever you want. I just kind of keep it as the default. And you can move the taskbar around. I like to keep it on the side because it just makes it a little bit easier when you look down and you see that, you know, there's one taskbar and then another. I would find myself clicking the one down below lower, kind of like this right here, and it just got confusing. So any of the VM type stuff I run, I always put the taskbar over on the side. All right, so as you can kind of see here, you're limited by your resolution settings. You can't really get to that 1920 by 1080, which is the standard for pretty much everything nowadays. If you want to just keep it lower, then you can. If your max resolution is 1920 by 1080, then lower is better because it'll fit in the screen. So to get the extra resolution options, we're going to go to Devices, Insert Guest Additions to CD Image. Then we click on this PC. We double click on the additions. Go down to the install file. Click yes. Next. Next. Install. Install. Couple of flashes. And it is done. It's going to ask you to reboot it. Go ahead and go for it. This is when an SSD drive comes in handy, because if you're using a regular drive or a USB drive, it's going to take a lot longer to shut down and a lot longer to boot back up than it is right now. All right, so here we go. So we've rebooted. We're back in. Let's go ahead and change this resolution. So we go up here to Devices, View, Virtual Screen, and we want to change it to 1920 by 1080. The reason why mine fills up the way that it does is because my host computer is set to 1920 by 1200, and then the VMs are running 1920 by 1080. The extra couple of pixels gives me enough space to have that bottom bar down below. Perfect. Now, a little bit of funky stuff. If we close it down or move it, it's going to change the resolution dynamically. We can put a stop to that by turning off the auto resize guest display, and then it's going to pretty much stick to whatever the last thing you set it at to. So let's go to virtual screen, 1920 by 1080, and now if we were to move it around, the size stays the same. And this is really important because once you actually set up your macro, you want it to be the same resolution. Otherwise, every time you change it, it's going to be clicking on random stuff. It's just not going to work. So there is basically where you want to be. At this point now, you can install your MT4 platform, install the macro recorder, whichever one you want to use. I know there's some free ones out there that some people have actually recommended to me instead of the JitBit, but I already paid JitBit. I know the software fairly well, so I'm just going to keep using that. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to create a shared folder. This folder will basically allow us to pass files on between the host computer to all the different VMs. I mainly use it for the settings, so I can easily just copy and paste settings from one EA to another, to another, to another. Let's jump into that, and I'll show you how to do it. We need to click on the VirtualBox Manager, select our VM, go to Settings, down here to Shared Folder, and what we're going to add is over here, folder path, other. Forgive me, I'm blurring out all this stuff here. Virtual machines. This is its own hard drive. I keep everything on its own SSD drive to make it run as smooth as possible. Shared VM folder and select folder. Now you can change the folder name to anything you want. I'm just going to leave it the same. Hit OK. Hit OK. And then we should be able to go over to here. Network discovery. So we can click here to change, turn on network discovery and file sharing. No. So now here is my desktop that pops up. Let's go back. Oh, here it is. This is the VirtualBox folder. So I click here and I can see that I have the shared VM folder. This is another one, ignore it, from when I was testing it out before I started recording. Double click here and I can see all of my set files for all the different versions of the Algo tester. I put my macros in here, installers for different stuff, and just random things. These are all just kind of junk. Everything that's important is actually organized into the folders. So there you go. Any machine, any linked clone, anything you open will have access to all these files. So it makes it super easy and fairly quick. Okay, so one other thing I wanted to go over is that in the settings, you have the ability to share a clipboard and drag and drop. I think it's enabled bidirectional at first. What you want to do is just disable both of them. You don't want drag and drop. You don't want shared clipboard. The reason why is because if you share the clipboard, then you could be copying a bunch of results from one while this guy's running, and this one can be copying at the same time. It'll use the most recent copy, so you can get the results from one VM, paste it into another, or if you're actually doing work on your host PC, then you could be copying a web link or something, and the next thing you know, you're pasting that into the spreadsheets unknowingly. So just disable it, call it good, and yeah. Linked clones. So there's a reason why we use this, and that's because it is simple and easy. So we already have this guy running. While it's running, you can't make clones. So we're going to have to shut this guy down. I prefer to just fully shut it down, don't save the machine state. Once it is gone, there we go, we can go to clone. Now, I have my stuff organized fairly easily. I've got the base image, I've got linked clones. New group is something I probably just need to delete. I'm going to select my linked clones. There we go. So if you do a full clone, it will make a 100 or 80 gigabyte or whatever, an actual copy of the entire disk. Takes up a lot of space. Any software that you have on the computer, like the older versions of the NoNonsense Forex Algo tester, it had to be linked to your MQL5 account. So every time you would boot it up, you would have to redo the licensing on it. Big pain in the ass. If you just go with linked clone, you don't have to do any of that. So that's the way I always do it, and that's the way I suggest you guys do it too. You don't have to keep the disk names. You don't have to keep the hardware UUIDs. You just hit linked clone and go. And then you do it again. And you do it again. Maybe I have to put a 2 at the end of this one. Nope, hit full clone on accident. But you may do that, just hit X out of there. It says 10 seconds remaining, but it takes a lot longer to make a full clone. So linked clone, go again. So now we have our main base image, and what I like to do is just leave that, and I don't backtest on that at all. Everything should be ready to go off of it. You can run like one backtest setup to make sure it's running properly and everything's 100%. All your accounts are logged into, and then after that, any backtesting just do on these clones. And the reason why is because if something doesn't work and you're finding that like, oh, my macro wasn't going fast enough, or it was going too fast and I was missing out on stuff, I keep getting errors, you can just delete these clones, make the changes on your base image, and then just create the links, the clones again, because it's easy, it's quick, it works. It's not going to hinder your performance. So I'm going to hit start. I'm going to hit start. Does 2 at a time for me. I'm going to do another one, start. Hit another one for start. So that's pretty much it. Now I've got 4 different VMs all loading up at the same time. Again, solid state drive, huge help. Otherwise, you'd be sitting here for 4 or 5 minutes just waiting and hoping that it just goes faster. Yeah, so that is pretty much it. That's how you create the linked clones. They're not going to take up a whole bunch of space. If you keep your linked clone around for like, I don't know, a couple of months, then those files are going to get pretty full, but it's not going to be crazy. And the other thing is you can use one of these and like, oh, I'm going to use this one and I'm going to install all these weird little indicators that I want to test out, but I don't want it to possibly damage my computer or any of my other ones. You can set up one as like a testing bench, just so you can figure out which ones are good, which ones are bad, without affecting the other ones. So what I'm going to do is close all these out now. And show you guys deleting the clones. So let's say you did it and then all of a sudden like, oh man, I forgot to log into my Google account, or I forgot to install Excel. I need to go back and do that. You can just go in here, remove. You want to delete all files. Don't just do remove only. Get rid of all the files. You're never going to use them again. And now you can go back to your base image and update anything you need to, and then just do more clones. One thing I will say is, I forgot to mention, you want to go into the snapshots, and it's just good habit to delete all the snapshots of the system as well. You could theoretically just let these keep on going, but it kind of gets funky if for some reason a linked base got updated to that and then it messes with the whole hierarchy, and it's just a mess. It's best to just delete them. I'm going to show you this other cool feature is, let's say you have 4 VMs, 2 VMs, however many VMs running, and you just have to go do something. Not sure what it is. I'm going to open this up just so I can show you guys that you can actually close out. Your options are save the machine state, send the shutdown signal, which is basically just turning off your computer, and then power off the machine, which just means it just kills it. It's like holding down the power button when you can't turn off your computer and it just dies. We don't want to use that. We want to use this as much as possible. But if you're like, I need to reboot the computer, I need to go do something, you can save the machine state, hit OK. I'm only going to do it on this one, and then the rest of these guys I'm just going to shut down. Okay, so here we can go here, and this is the one we actually saved. So what we can do is just hit start, and instead of booting up, ran into a problem, happens sometimes. Instead of booting up from the beginning, it literally, you could be in the middle of testing and turn it down, or I mean, turn it off, and it'll come right back in. I've had to do that, or I've just straight up, like my computer decides to update in the middle of the night, and it will just save the state for me automatically, and then when I come back in the morning, I can just pick up exactly where I left off. It's actually a really cool feature. So I'm actually going to send the shutdown signal now. So I wanted to add this little bit as well, going through the settings in a little bit more detail. So we already talked about the shared clipboard and the drag and drop disabling it. Going into system, I have an 8-core 16-thread CPU. I set all my VMs at 4. The VMs they don't lock the CPUs to the VMs, so you can use more than what is theoretically available. All this means is that this particular VM, Backtest 3 that I'm looking at right here, is going to be looking for 4 cores. 4 of these VMs could all be using the same core. It's just going to pick them at random and use the power from them. The display screen, I set the video memory to 256, VBox SVGA, enable 3D acceleration, makes things run a little bit smoother. We already went over the shared folders. The last thing would be in the system motherboard. I set all mine to just above 4 megabytes. I recently installed 64 gigs in my machine, so I'm up from 32. So for some of them, I may bump up to 6. It just depends. I'm gonna have to mess around with it. Earlier today, I did a little bit of a test. I was able to have 12 machines up and running. I was actively backtesting on 9 of them, and my CPU was hitting right around 70-80%ish, so I still had a little bit of headroom to go up a little bit higher. Okay, thank you everyone for watching the last video of this series. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments below, or reach out to me on the NoNonsense Forex Discord server. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. The next series that I'm going to be doing is going to be showing you how to create a full algo in 3 parts using the NoNonsense Forex Algo Tester. Finding a C1 and combining it with a C2 will be the first video. Second one is going to be a quick way to find a starting baseline, and we're going to test 35 different baselines in basically one run. The last video is going to be finding an exit and a volume indicator. I anticipate this video being released sometime in early July, as the NoNonsense Forex Algo Tester just came out with a new version, and I want to make sure that I'm using it for the new series. I just have to say that Rui is an absolute rock star when it comes to this EA. There are a lot of projects out there that get abandoned shortly after their launch, but Rui is constantly updating, listening to suggestions, and fixing issues as they come up. That being said, if you do have suggestions or Nova bug, please let them know. I also want to say thank you to the small group of testers I am working with to find the best possible ways to use this EA. Everyone has a lot of great ideas, and we are constantly getting closer to more profitable algos. We are all in this together. So that's it for now. I'm going to start working on the new algo to show you guys for the next series. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.